And hundreds of thousands of gigabytes of data are generated every day in AI applications that ranging from healthcare, logistics to smart manufacturing. With much of this data generated, the key consideration is where the data should be processed. An understanding of critical at-the-edge intelligence versus non-time critical intelligence is necessary, as some applications require cloud computing and others at the edge. Or is there a hybrid approach that will be more prevalent? This session will set the stage for how edge and cloud play critical roles for AI-driven technologies. Joining this session are Mustafa Essa, he's AI and Data Analytics Distinguished Engineer at Vodafone. Next to him is Shravan Valala, he's Vice President of Technology at Robin.io. And on the end is Wei Yang To, he's General Manager of Market Development, at Intel. And gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I hope I got your names, your pronunciations, and your titles correct.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Wei, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you on the end there. What is really AI's value in enabling sustainable, secure, and also data-rich future for 5G and edge?
Thanks for the question. That's a very good question. So if we look at the 5G is here today, right, and the edge itself, we're going to drive a lot of data into the network pipe. And being able to turn the data that coming in become an asset is very important, and that's where AI come into the mix. AI wouldn't do the magic without data set. So now having a data set question is like, how do I implement AI? And use it in a very ethical way as well, right? So I'll just throw like two examples for sustainables and as well as the what's the other one? Sustainables and
sustainable, secure, and data rich.
And secure, right? Just take two examples, right? Sustainables, it means a green, it means a power management. What we showcasing for this time around in this year, right? One classic example is how do we use AI to manage the power at the system level so that it will go accordingly based on the workload. So it's a workload driven base of the AI power management, whereby if you hit the maximum workload, you take the powers hit. If you don't need the maximum workloads running, right, you can tune it down automatically with a closed automation, and that save a lot of the energies, right, coming out from the whole system level. This is one example in a more sustainable way. If we look at security, same thing as well. If I just take a SASE, right, secure access at the edge as examples, we insert the AI capability with our partners, and whereby the security itself will do an early prediction in terms of the potential of the intrusion that coming in, and that will help the data become more secure, and it help to protect the user as well, right, of the whole data set, right? So AI is critical again, right? Data set is an asset. Using AI to unlock the capability, that's super critical.
Shravan, automation and orchestration, sort of your wheelhouse there. How does that play a critical role in AI-driven applications?
Yeah. So like what Wei mentioned, there is data. There is a lot of data because of the number of devices that are connecting to the 5G network today. That data has to be processed, and with the advent of edge computing, that data is now getting processed at the edge. Now that means there will be a lot more edge nodes. There is a need to have automation in place to bootstrap these edge nodes, and that's where Robin's MDCap and the BMAS that we have provides a ability to automate the installation of the OS, firmware upgrades, FPGA, flashing, programming, configuration, etc., which allows a smooth transition of these edge nodes from once they are racked and stacked, they can be ready to deploy applications. Once the applications are ready to deploy, most of the times today in the AI world, the applications are microservice based, and the de facto orchestrator is Kubernetes, which enables these microservices to be hosted seamlessly. So now the AI application is ready to be deployed. These AI applications are usually very compute intensive. So you have requirements like NUMA awareness, CPU pinning, and so you need an orchestrator which is smart enough to place these workloads at the right edge nodes. Once the application is deployed, now comes the next phase where you have LCM operations. These are the day N operations that you have to perform, where you have to manage the node and you also have to manage the application. You have to make sure the nodes are upgraded periodically. You have to make sure the applications are updated periodically. So you need a workflow to automate this large number of edge nodes that are now present.
Yeah. Mustafa, let's get to some use cases here. Can you tell us maybe a use case or an example of how AI at the edge really allows these AI applications?
Yeah, sure. As you know, we can talk about different use cases that related to the latency and saving the spectrum of transmission and so on. Moving the processing part of the AI from the cloud into the edge will allow us to do much more things and much more benefits to be driven by this transformation for the data. You know, at the cloud, for example, we at the old days we were doing the processing and inference at the cloud. Right now we can do the trained model at the cloud and then push it directly to the edge, and then the edge do the inference there. So the latency and whole the action time for the machine or for example for the autonomous cars to do an action according to the machine learning will be much shorter than the old legacy thing. For example, you can talk about the autonomous vehicles, but I will back again to our expertise for the mobile network, for example, the beamforming, for example. This is one of the use cases that you can rely on the edge. Machine learning algorithm, because you need to do the maneuverability between the beams and the antenna beams from one place to another, and you can concentrate the beams for in this area if you have something like a traffic jam, and when the traffic jam have been full released, you can redistribute the beam forming again, and you can predict what is the next beam forming activity or action that you want to do. If you do it on the cloud, you will lose a lot of time, and you do it at the edge, it will be much better. So this is one of the use cases that you can use it in the telco, as well as autonomous vehicles, as I told you, which is very famous. The car can do the action automatically at the edge before without taking the too longer time or longer time for the chain for the data to be transferred from the sensors to the cloud and then processed, and then back again to the steering, for example, to move from right or left and avoid something. So these are two examples.
Shervan, can you give us another use case, maybe a new use case that we haven't heard yet, where you would feel more comfortable to do the compute at the edge rather than in the cloud, as Mustafa mentioned?
At the edge or at the cloud?
Well, yeah, at the edge rather than
in the cloud, right?
In the cloud, correct.
In the cloud,
correct.
Yeah. So yes, when you have a requirement to do real-time or near real-time decision making, it's the edge where your AI application should run. But there are various scenarios where this is not feasible. For example, if your decision that you have to make depends on not only the current data set, but depends on, let's say, large historical data set, that can't be done at the edge. You don't have the storage capacity there at the edge. And the other use case I can think of is if your decision depends on not only your local data set, but a group of or a geo distributed locations where you have sensors or something that's sending this data. So at that point, your edge will not be able to make the decision. So then you have to move the decision to the cloud. For example, there are a lot of applications which can't be realized today on the edge. For example, genome sequencing, weather prediction, or even natural language processing. Those things cannot be done at the edge because of the compute requirements and the data requirements that these applications have.
Any scenarios or new applications that maybe haven't been talked about as much as maybe autonomous vehicles?
Well, I'll kind of point back to Mustafa's example just now. It was funny enough, we're showcasing the same example in our booth, right? Beamforming, because it's a true foundation, right, for a lot of use cases, right? We don't want to create a technology that just be applicable for one use cases. And beamforming is a perfect example, right? It quite applied to applicable for across the different use cases, right? What we showcase here for this time around is the AI-driven beamforming, right? Just exactly the same thing as I thought. I thought it's funny that we have exactly the same demo there, right? Using the real-time rig and non-real-time rigs, right, as the foundation to host the beamforming, so that you have third party coming in to drive the innovation, right? And different vendor have a different beamforming implementation, right? So you need that common architecture, right, to host the capability, and that's where AI come in as well, right, to run at the edge So yeah, I thought it's a very good example. I'm kind of second that as well. Yeah.
Does the beamforming use case or example apply to the hybrid sort of approach towards both edge and cloud AI technologies?
It is.
Okay, can maybe you walk us through that?
Because you have real time and non-real time, right? For real time, definitely you have to run at the edge, but for some of it, you don't force it to run everything at the edge as well. Edge is pretty expensive, the node, right? It's not cheap, right? Everything comes with a price. So you're going to have some non-real time as well that you will utilize the existing engine running at the cloud, right? Use it, whatever it is there. Don't reinvent it. Use it, right? Whatever that you need running at the real time, right? Use it at the edge itself. So it could be one example, and depending at the vendor itself, right? How the latency requirement is. You don't need to force feed it to just running at the just simply at the edge. Right, so yes, right, short answer is, yeah, it applies for the use cases as well.
Siobhan, when we're talking about cloud, edge, and AI technologies and applications, what do you think that conversation would sound like this time next year?
Yeah, so hybrid AI is how things are running today. If you take a look at any smart device, there is a minimum intelligence at the edge device to filter out what data needs to be sent to the cloud, and the sophisticated decisions happen at the cloud. For example, if you take a smart camera, it is continuously recording video, but you don't stream all the video. The end device has enough intelligence to detect an event and then send only a part of the video segment, which can be further analyzed at the cloud. So a lot of smart devices, home appliances that we have today have a hybrid AI implementation.
Mustafa, the future of AI, when we're talking about hybrid, edge and cloud?
Yeah, I believe that I'm second, Shravan, in this thought. I believe that the hybrid is the most optimum things, because if you are talking, I will back again to the first talk about the cost. When you put a lot of processing units at the edge, you pay a lot of money, but you save on the other side the spectrum, which is one of the precious aspect in the equation. So it's like a balancing. What is the benefit that you will get by adding this processing unit at the edge, and you have to do this kind of calculation at the beginning. So I think the hybrid is most optimal thing, because you can do the balancing and always continue to optimize the system. For example, another use case I will try to take it, for example, at the power and energy saving. We have a Go Green, for example, initiative in Vodafone. You can do the edge part for closing the spectrum or the antennas when you have a low traffic at the midnight, for example. But at the this is for the edge, because you want to do it a very fast action. But on the cloud, you can do a lot of analysis that you can save your battery life, for example, and you can do some charging patterns to find, because you don't want to do the charging all the time. Yeah. You maybe sometimes, to save the battery life, you have to do charging, and this is charging even if you have a power, commercial power is on, you don't have any blackout. So this kind of analysis which will need a lot of trend and a huge history data sets, that you will need the cloud part. So you have to do the hybrid, and you can do this kind of study all the time to reduce the cost, enhance the performance and the efficiency for our customers.
Did you want to respond? Because I want to just touch on the spectral efficiency savings. I feel like if there is any reticence to move towards AI technologies or applications, in your, and I want to go down the road here, in your mind, what would be the number one challenge that people are concerned about before they adopt hybrid or they adopt edge?
About AI, adopting?
About AI.
About
is
AI.
It purely monetary, or are there other challenges?
Well, not quite only, right? I touched on a couple of things, right? It is about the efficiency, right? It is about driving the innovation as well, because when you do hybrid, right, you're opening up possibility of innovation, right, for different players to come in and participate. And then it is about using it in an ethical way as well, right? I can't stress more enough, right? In a very ethical way, right? So the challenges is the industry itself today, when they come come together, right, it will be easier to provide a standard tools underlay, but then per use cases you have to optimize a capability so that it fit better into each vertical, right? Then it help the ecosystem come in and participate more. We want to encourage more people to come in to embrace the technology, right? So it's challenging, but then it's heading towards that direction right now. You have common tools right now, everyone embrace and the industry player is optimized based on the common, right? The common tools. That is a very encouraging situation right now. We see the ecosystem coming together.
Yeah, Shravan, and from your perspective, the challenge or number one challenge as people move towards AI, what would be the reticence there? What would be the reservation to move slower than quicker?
No, I just want to add one thing is that based on the use case, some of the use case might mandate you to process certain information at either edge or at the cloud. For example, if you have secure data, like for GDPR reasons, you have to probably process some of this data at the edge. What was your question?
Oh no! If entities have a reticence or they are not moving towards AI technology as quickly as they should, what would be the reason for that? And of course, Wei mentioned a few factors.
I would say cost and also the value that you get out of it.
Right, and he mentioned that you have to sort of a balancing act.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So it's not that just because you have AI, every application has to have it, but it's getting there. It's getting there. There are also enhancements in the hardware to realize some of this AI computation. So it's going to be eventually be there. It will become Uber everywhere.
From an operator's perspective, any reticence on your part to move towards, not in your department.
Sure.
That's your core competency, but what have you heard, I guess, around AI and people's challenges in moving towards that?
I think I cannot add anything more than what they said. It will be something like related to the privacy and the data existence, because this is a personal data that you don't want to expose it to anyone to do some maybe more innovation, but you have to do this innovation with some law enforcement. Then that's why you have to maneuver between this and be more cautious when you're dealing with the data of our customer or individual, which is something very, very critical. As well as the cost of the say, the readiness of infrastructure, not always available in all the countries. Some connectivity for the edge or terminals, like for example, the technology like the eSIM will improve this kind of connectivity, because you have the machine itself. It's already have the tool to be connected to the network. You don't have to buy the SIM card and you insert it. So most of the technology, as you see, is most of the ecosystem of the technology right now are trying to accelerate the connectivity, the data collection, and so on. But the challenge is still the same: the cost, the infrastructure, the ethical part, and as well as the law enforcement.
Well,
some data patterns might not actually generate anything useful, right? At the end, your data has to generate a model that can be trained and can be reused to provide some inference. I don't know if all data is there driven towards providing some AI constructs, right?
Good point. Well, I think you all brought up use cases and interesting factors of the evolution towards AI technology and applications. Wei, thanks so much for your time. I think beamforming, something you brought up, and something that you have in your booth actually here at Mobile World Congress is something that should be talked about a lot more, because there's a lot of sort of tangential things we can talk about around that. So thanks for bringing that up. Shravan, we haven't done this before. This is our first time, so
yes.
You did a fantastic job. And in fact, you're on another session immediately after this, so we have you for another half an hour or so. So great information, automation, orchestration, of course, is your core competency, and we're glad that you brought that to the table. And Mustafa, it's always good to have an operator's perspective.
My pleasure.
I know you guys are super busy, so we're glad you made it in. And hopefully we can do it again. Not virtually this time. We'll do it in person again, hopefully.
Sure. My pleasure.
Right.
All my pleasure.
Thanks again for everyone's time.
All right, thank you.